Yo, and welcome back to Creeps and Crimes
Podcast.
I'm Taylar.
I'm Morgan. Happy Thursday and happy episode 217.
217. And maybe if it's a good day, then you could pop over to YouTube and look at this 3-point camera shoot.
And behind our chairs, where we have finished the corners, not Taylor's yet, but
not mine yet.
Browse.
Completely.
Get
Take
down.
a good look.
Get down.
Well, I can only do one at a time. There you go.
Perfect.
Yeah, Morgan, there's stuff that has to go on the walls. My wall has to be done, and then we'll be completed. We'll be done.
We went to HomeSense this weekend.
We did.
And World Market.
World Market did a lot of damage.
And then we went to lunch and got in trouble.
And then we did.
That's a story for another day.
Literally, we'll talk to you about it on Pipe Not Gauze because it's a whole thing that I can go off on right now.
We went to HomeSense and we had really high expectations, and they were
just okay.
Yeah, it was just like a warehouse for Bed Bath & Beyond that had the size of like a TJ Maxx in it.
Yeah.
So it was just like,
I will say that their like prints and stuff were some of the best. There was a lot of like trendy pieces that
dope ass mirrors.
They don't have like a ton of at like Home Goods or TJ Maxx. Like you'll see a few, but those get taken by the bitches that get there at 8 a.m.
Their Christmas selection was awesome.
Their Christmas selection was very like campy. It was just as like trendy and everything, and I loved it. Like there was a lot of stuff in there that we liked. What we were looking for was nothing that was in there.
Yeah,
nothing that was in there.
But we did find the table.
We did get the table, which is the whole purpose of us going. And then we got that little gold mic over there, which was hilarious. It's a story for another time. The little boots too.
Most of the bar. No, that's World Market.
Yeah, most of the bar
that is World Market.
Yeah, except for like maybe the flutes or the glasses.
The flutes were HomeSense. Everything else was World Market.
Yeah, we got these little martini glasses. I don't know if you can see them because they're like underneath, but they have like little olives on them, like the anthropology dupes. They're
they were dope.
Fucking cute. We had to buy them immediately. So we did. But Morgan, do you have anything you want to talk about, or do you want me to go through the list that I've conjured up?
I'm sure you're itching to go through the list. I really don't have anything other than we had a good weekend.
We
Saturday, we had a little
get together in the backyard to watch a game.
Football game.
Yep.
Taylor had the projector up. Ollie was here. He was being
he
fucking
had
charmer.
The best time of his life.
And he was so dramatic when we got home. Anyway, so we had a great time Saturday, then we had a good day Sunday, and I just had a good little weekend. It was fun. Like I had enough time at home. I had enough time out of the house.
Yeah, like I didn't feel like I was exhausted by the end of the weekend, but we did a lot, and we got a lot done.
We were gonna move this up here on Sunday, and I took after we ate sushi. I said
no,
it's not happening.
I really can't. There was no way that we could have done that on Sunday after what we just went through getting it up here today on Tuesday. I can guarantee that there was no way that it was happening on Sunday. I'll go through some of the things that I've written down this weekend on my little notes app, because I don't know if we like ever fully explained, but then a few weeks ago we were like kind of being like, I feel like we're just kind of talking in circles in the intro and like doesn't really have a lot to say, so it's annoying. Because
and if you hate the intro, fucking skip forward 12 minutes.
I don't know what else to tell you. Just click.
Don't feel bad for you.
Scroll.
Sorry.
This is our podcast. We do whatever the fuck we want. Literally.
Oh, we had a little TikTok that went viral.
Yeah, we did have a little TikTok.
Everyone told us that they wish podcasting equipment was more expensive.
Yeah, and then someone thought he really did something
cheap
with like some fucking comments and shit. We're ignoring them for the most part. Morgan had to clap back
at least on one.
Yeah, but okay, so I'm gonna save my favorite one, which is SEARS.
I knew it.
I'm gonna save that for another day.
SEARS, what's going on?
Literally, but here's the preface of it. How the fuck did SEARS fall from grace so hard? Like SEARS went from being SEARS,
but then they were like,
fine, we'll talk about it now.
Dirty SEARS.
But what I'm talking about is like they went from being like you could get a house kit that they would send to you and they would make. Like this is one of the oldest department stores.
They were your department store. They were your Walmart, your Target, your Home Depot, and your AutoZone all together,
all in one. Like and your Best Buy, all in one. Don't forget it. You could get dryers and washers there.
Everything
that you needed, you could get at SEARS. A house.
Did they go bankrupt?
I don't remember what the
probably.
I mean, there was a big deal with it. It like dissolved. I feel like there was like a whole thing. I'm gonna have to look it up, and we'll do. Maybe I'll do an entire case.
She's really enamored by it.
On
she
SEARS.
Wanted to talk about it in the car on the way to the store, and then she talked about it at sushi. And I knew she'd bring
I'm really torn up about SEARS. Like, what the fuck happened? Like, seriously.
SEARS magazine where you could literally
There was a magazine.
Anything. Yep.
You could get anything. I mean, anything. Oh, Halloween costumes when they'd send out their little pamphlets at the end of the year and you'd circle the one that you want. That was SEARS too.
You know what I want to bring back?
What?
The Christmas magazines where you got to circle your fucking gifts.
I do too.
Give me one right now.
Give me one right now.
Because I'll find things I never knew I
bought one
needed.
the other day of Christmas time, like holiday time recipes, like for at home and for things. So I bought 2 magazines of it.
I'm going to need one of those for the Christmas party.
Yeah. And I went through and I've been circling through the ones that I want to make and like pulling them out and putting them. So I'll literally give you one. And I actually texted Madison because she was like, I'm getting so tired of the same shit. Did you get that snap?
I did. Yeah.
And I was like, I literally
sent
just
her
went
over
and bought
2 recipes I had in my notes app.
Yeah. I was like, I'll send you this fucking magazine when I'm done with it. And then there's another thing that I want to say to talk about at another day, maybe next week on 2/18, because we're recording that technically on Thursday because it's Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. And we will I'll do that then because it's funny and it's gonna be a really loud crazy rant from me.
I do have something crazy too that I want to tell you, but I'm gonna save it for Piping Hot Goss. I can't say it publicly.
Okay.
Fuck, I can't forget about it. I wanted to tell you as soon as I got in here today, but okay.
Okay, guys. We're going to hit you with it now.
All right. If you're driving, throw that shit on cruise control.
If you get a glass, pour that shit up.
And let's get creepy.
Okay, Morgie, what do you got for us today?
Today, I am giving an alien update. I don't really know what to call it. I'm sure you guys have seen on TikTok and on social media the viral clips from this little like subcommittee house meeting where people are like, there's aliens in the oceans and all sorts of crazy shit. So I researched it and I'm going to break it down for you today.
Okay, let's hear it.
And I have no idea what you're going to title this. Actually, I do, but I don't want you to title it that.
What do you think I'm going to do it?
Well, we'll get to the name of like what really they were talking about at this meeting. So last Wednesday, November 13th, 2024, and today is November 18th, 2024, if you're listening to this in the future, there was a hearing held by a subcommittee of the House Oversight Committee in Washington, D.C. In this meeting, or the viral clips that you see on TikTok, Colorado Representative Lauren Boebert was asking the questions that we all wanted, but maybe didn't need.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We're a little scared of, if you are scared of that shit. At the start, she asked a group of experts if they had knowledge that the Department of Defense, or the DoD, was involved with any secretive projects that involve the, quote, manipulation of human genetics with, quote, non-human genetic material. And this group of experts, they came forward admitting that, you know, the United States government, and I'm going to give you their backgrounds here in a second, but that the United States government really lacked transparency with the public regarding UAPs, which are what UFOs they used to call. They're like aerial phenomena, and alien life, which no fucking shit. We know that you lack transparency with the public.
Right.
This group consisted of retired Navy Rear Admiral Dr. Tim Gallaudet, the former Department of Defense official Louis Elizondo, former NASA Associate Administrator of Space Policy Michael Gold, and journalist Michael Schellenberger. Dr. Tim Gallaudet testified during Wednesday's hearing about reported military encounters with UAPs, and this is what he had to say. Confirmation that UAPs are interacting with humanity came for me in January of 2015 when I was serving as the commander of the Naval Meteorology and Oceanography Command. Cool.
Awesome.
At the time, my personnel were participating in a pre-deployment naval exercise off the U.S. East Coast that included the USS Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group. He said that during this exercise, he received an email on the Navy's secure network from the Operations Officer of Fleet Forces Command. And the subject line in this email was in all capital letters saying urgent. Safety of flight issue. He explained that the email was brief but alarming with words to the effect of, quote, if any of you know what these are, tell me ASAP. We are having multiple near mid-air collisions, and if we do not resolve it soon, we will have to shut down the exercise.
Oh.
He said that this now declassified video, and it is on the internet, was attached to the email, which the very next day had disappeared from his inbox, and the incident was never discussed again.
Oh.
He said that this had always disturbed him since 2015 and for the remainder of his service, and really stressed that there was a public safety requirement for more government transparency dealing with extraterrestrial life and UFOs or 100%. UAPs.
100%.
And I'll talk about the DOD's testimony at the end because I feel that it is most concerning. But the biggest development out of Wednesday's hearing came from another witness, independent journalist Michael Schellenberger, who claims sources inside the Pentagon revealed knowledge about a UAP program known as Immaculate Constellation.
Not Immaculate Conception.
That's what I kept typing. I'm not even kidding you. And even in my head, every time I read it through these reports, I was like, Immaculate Conception.
Thank God.
I think actually that you might need to call it that because I'm a little scared to put it in writing what we're covering.
Oh, I'm really scared.
So maybe this is going to be called, it's going to be a Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs kind of thing.
Oh no. Okay, good.
And the Seven Apples or whatever we call it.
Was it the Bad Apples?
The Bad Apples. So he reveals this 12-page report from a whistleblower that alleged the secret program run by the Pentagon. And in the report, there were a number of instances that involved UAPs in and around the ocean. This journalist, Schellenberger, submitted a written testimony in November of 2023 titled Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Exposing the Truth. This was to the Subcommittee on Cybersecurity, Information Technology, in Government Innovation, and the Subcommittee on National Security, the Border and Foreign Affairs of the House Oversight and Accountability Committee. Got it. Why do the committees have such long names?
This is really dramatic of them.
It really is. They're
really
all
is.
like that too. So let's talk about it. Schellenberger's source, the whistleblower, their role and identification remains a mystery, at least to the public. I'm sure they've fucking figured out who this person is by now. But this 214-page document that I'm going to be talking about, you can find it. We'll link it, 1, and 2, you can Google search Immaculate Constellation. And there's 2 links. Click on the one that takes you to the house.gov website to get to this 214-page document. If you're wanting to know all the details beyond what I'm going to talk about, which is only the written 12-page statement, you're welcome to read 214 pages of legal jargon if you'd like.
That ain't for us.
It's not for me. But for those that aren't interested in doing that, I'm going to summarize the important parts for you. So it starts us off with the call to action. The government is not being transparent about what it knows about unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAP, formerly UFOs, and that elements within the military and the IC are in violation of their constitutional duty to notify Congress of their options. So their call to action is, you guys have shit going on and you need to be telling Congress, and you're fucking not.
You're leaving Congress out of the conversation, which
and Congress is offended. They're like, A, B conversation, C your way out.
Yeah.
So this stems from President-elect and former President Donald Trump, as well as Barack Obama, who had publicly stated that they have information about UAPs that they have not released. Most of the public wrote this off as, oh, well, they don't have to tell us because they have the absolute most clearance of anybody in America. Mm-hmm. But because the president has discretion over what to share with Congress and what not to share when it comes to classified material relating to national security, it really wasn't much of a fucking problem. But now, existing and former U.S. government officials have told members of Congress that the AARO, or the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, and the Pentagon have broken the law by not revealing a significant body of information about UAPs, including military intelligence databases that have evidence of their existence as physical craft. So they're basically saying, like, you're breaking the law because these aerial phenomena are flying over military bases and you're not fucking telling Congress.
Enclosed airspaces, which is not even only just your jurisdiction. That's multiple people's jurisdiction.
Yeah. One of these individuals is a current or former U.S. government official acting as this UAP whistleblower. So the whistleblower is a current standing government official. We don't know who they are. The person wrote a report that says, quote, the executive branch has been managing UAP, NHI issues without congressional knowledge, oversight, or authorization for some time, quite possibly decades. Also, this person drops jaws when he released the name of an active and highly classified Department of Defense program, USAP program, which stands for Unacknowledged Special Access Program, and that is the Immaculate Constellation. The whistleblower told the public that the USAP is a strategic intelligence program that is part of the U.S. military's family of long-standing, highly sensitive programs that deal with various aspects of this giant UAP problem that we have going on. And he alleges that the Department of Defense created this USAP called Immaculate Constellation in 2017. And he had accidentally stumbled across this database containing this UFO information, as well as the entire documented program.
How are you stumbling just upon that?
That's what I want to know.
You ain't looking for that.
I don't know who they are.
Right.
Maybe they have maybe they're in the Google Drive. I don't fucking know what it looks like over there. But they're saying he, she, they, them, that
is really concerning though.
Yeah,
that's really concerning.
Unless they work in the Department of Defense.
They have to be someone high up that stumbled on this. And they're probably just even more so. Oh, Morgan is wrapped up with her mic cord. But more so than anything about them whistleblowing because they feel like it's right that the public needs to know. I think that they're just butthurt that they weren't included in the first place.
Yeah. And what's funny is that whistleblowers nowadays, you can really get away with anything because once it hits the mainstream media, which can happen
you don't have
so
to do
quick,
anything.
They know that if you're fucking dead, then they came after you.
Yeah.
And the world knows. Back then, 30 years ago,
it didn't.
Whistleblowers, you were fucking terrified to whistleblow because they would kill you and no one would ever hear it.
What's even scarier is that the media, because I've heard about conspiracies of instances where media companies have moles in them that work for, that are basically undercover agents that go and say hey, this is about to go out, you need to go buy this story back from this media company. But for the most part, media companies, they're journalists, and
they don't care
one thing about a journalist, they dirty.
Or they accidentally slip it out on X.
Yeah, exactly.
Or TikTok now.
Yeah.
So the program contains extremely clear videos and images taken using infrared, forward-looking infrared, full motion video, and still photography.
Oh my God.
The report that was shared with Congress said that the Immaculate Constellation serves as a central or a parent USAP that consolidates all observations and spawnings by both tasked and untasked collection platforms, aka civilian and military observations.
Okay.
From my understanding of what they're saying here is that
they're the Men in Black.
This Immaculate Constellation is the parent company to the USAP.
Yep.
And it's a cumulation. What's that called? Accumulation of every written report or observation of any sort of aerial phenomena.
So I bet they have someone that's assigned to solely TikTok, and
they're the fucking Men in Black. That's what they are. You're right. I didn't catch that till I just
100%. This is who these people are.
100%.
What is it?
USAP.
USAP. Hi. Yeah. Did you know that your name's Men in Black?
Yeah, that's what the public calls you, at least, just so you know. So the report also includes 7 categories of evidence. In detail, it describes several UAP sightings collected by government assets and U.S. military personnel. But before we go through the sightings, I want to note that in response to this, the Pentagon and the Department of Defense spokesperson Sue Grove said, the DOD has no record. The DOD has no record,
the DOD,
past or historical, of any type of SAP called Immaculate Constellation.
Okay, Sue. What's her name?
Sue.
Yeah, Sue.
All right, Sue. And also, I want to note here that in Schellenberger's written testimony, so the journalist's written testimony, he stated that a source warned him that simply printing the name Immaculate Constellation would trigger government surveillance of him under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act.
Let's go.
Stating, quote, they won't comment on it, but talking about it will put you in the danger zone. They enforce the secrecy with a lot of vigor.
Immaculate what is it?
Immaculate Constellation
is going to be the name of this episode.
Yeah, I mean, it's everywhere on
Put
the
it
internet
on
right now. It's too fucking late.
Yeah, it's too late.
You want to come after me? I don't know fucking shit.
I don't know anything.
Your fucking fault. It's everywhere.
Come
you
in
guys,
here.
It's literally on the government website.
Yeah.
So you did that to yourself. So let's run through this report to Congress from the whistleblower. This report you can find by searching Representative Nancy Mace, Immaculate Constellation. And I don't know why that one comes up. It's it's separated from the 212, so it was just easier to find it that way. Mm-hmm. It was released 6 days ago to the public. There is 7 sections to this report. Section 1, Unacknowledged Special Access Program, Immaculate Constellation. Section 2, USG, United States Government, Imagery Intelligence. Section 3, Defense Human Intelligence Reporting. Section 4, Department of Defense Bureaucratic Records. records. Section 5, restricted USG historical records. Section 6, signals intelligence. Section 7, sensitive sources. And then an intro and a conclusion. So section 1 is an explanation of Immaculate Constellation. So switching my iPad here. Give me 1 second. Okay, so as we already know, Immaculate Constellation is an unacknowledged special access program, or a USAP, established following the public disclosure of the AATIP AAWSAP programs by Luis Elizondo in 2017. And Luis is the head of Department of Defense that was at the hearing last week.
Okay.
He's the testimony that we'll talk about at the very end. They said upon disclosure to Congress, it was determined that this USAP and its collateral information have not been lawfully reported to Congress. Their primary mission is collecting imagery intelligence on UAPs and ARV-RV, or reproduction vehicles, utilize tasked and untasked U.S. military intelligence resources.
What?
Yeah. The United States government, their imagery intelligence that they're talking about, has a database that's accessible to personnel with appropriate security clearances and mission need. These databases are scattered across various organizations and services, which leads to what they assume is a fragmented ownership structure, which is probably how the whistleblower came across it. They had collected evidence from these databases that were available to the Department of Defense, and they were reviewed for this report. And I'm going to tell you that it's got a lot of fucking evidence that aliens are fucking real.
Oh, let's go.
Like, it's literally
let's ride.
Let's fucking ride. Before we go through each, there are like breakdowns of each type of UAP. So I want to kind of read through that before I go through like the actual examples. So these are the common UFO shapes that have been observed by the DoD. From 1991 to 2022, the most common UAP shape reported in the United States government data set were spheres, orbs, disc, saucers, ovals or tic-tacs, triangles, boomerang, arrowhead, and irregular and organic. So the sphere or the orb were the most reported shape. They have variations ranging from smooth, featureless orbs to spheres with visible openings, or they called it appendages. These objects suggest a possible standard in like UAP design because there's so many of them. That's the most common sighting. Yeah. And they are capable of high maneuverability and speed.
That turning radius is good.
They said the diversity within the sphere category spans from simple, like polished appearances to really complex structures that have like things hanging off or their appendages, like they said. And this suggests a broad range of purposes or technologies unique to whatever mission that orb is on. They believe. The second one was disc or saucer. So these saucer-shaped UAPs have been reported with and without domes. Flat saucers were flat saucers. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, flat.
Sounds weird. Saucers?
Flat saucers, yeah.
Flying saucer, yeah. Flat saucers were reported as well. These were the disc-like objects without the domes on top.
Right.
So you guys get what I'm saying. Like your regular flying saucer and then the flat ones. And they also said that traditional biconvex are also reported in the data as a disc or saucer. I don't know what the fuck that means.
Me either.
Then there's oval or tic-tac. Oval-shaped UAPs were reported not as much and only after like 2003.
Okay, is that like similar to like the
cigar shape?
The cigar shape.
That's kind of what I was picturing as a TikTok. Yeah, they maintain a uniform egg-like symmetry. Occasionally, they have a like teardrop shape. They said that the cylinder ones have usually convex ends, like a tic-tac, like a fucking. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. The next one is a triangle. Sorry. Triangles were among the rarest UAPs reported in the data. Most of these sightings were equilateral triangles, occasionally with vertical stabilizers that were visible on the top of the UFO. They said there was elongated isosceles types that were also reported, occasionally with the same vertical stabilizers observed on the equilateral triangle. Well, how do you make an isosceles triangle fly?
Well, what I'm thinking is like, you know, I feel like those are the least reported because if I saw a triangle flying in the sky, I'd think it's like one of those radar fighter jets.
Yeah.
Those dynamic ones that they made, you know, they made them at Area 51 and shit, like around the time they made the atomic bomb. Yeah, I think they're called black somethings. I don't know.
I know.
Yeah, you know what I'm like if I saw that, I'd be like, oh my God, that's one of the things that we watched in the documentaries. Like,
you're like, what's that doing here?
I wouldn't think it was a UFO.
Yeah, me neither. The boomerangs, and this is new to me. We've never heard of a boomerang or an arrowhead shape.
I do feel like one singular time there has been a case that we've talked about that did a boomerang, but it was like nothing serious.
All I think of is JoJo Siwa come back like a boomerang. So they were also among the rarest reported. The boomerangs exhibited bilateral symmetry with these big wings and like a really tall ratio compared to the wings. The Arrowhead UAPs also showed bilateral symmetry but possessed tapered wings instead and this like low aspect ratio. And then lastly is the irregular or organic. I had no idea what this means.
Like liquid.
Yeah, like to me, like light ball, like orb lighting.
Or to me, like the slimy, like things that can, you know, like move, change shapes and shit.
Yeah.
That's like organic to me.
Yeah, it says irregularly shaped. Those that defy simple geometric description were among the rarest reported sightings. Shape-shifting UAPs also appear in the data set, typically having a spherical or disc-like base form from which irregular geometries are seen to project. The floating brain or the jellyfish UAPs are present as well, characterized by a central mass from which multiple arms or spars hang downward. Finally, combined shapes were also observed, including cubes within spheres and ring saucers and various rectangular and cuboid forms.
I don't know about cubes flying, but...
Yeah. So we're going to break down, or we're going to talk about all of the sightings that were in this report.
Okay.
The first one was the cuboid formation of metallic orbs. There exists daytime full motion video and daytime forward-looking infrared footage of a formation of 12 metallic orbs that were skimming the ocean surface at a really high speed before disappearing in multiple directions. The rapid and agile maneuvering of the metallic orbs were incompatible with known aerospace vehicles and were between 3 to 6 meters in diameter. In the opening segment of this video, the 12 metallic orbs flew in a tight cuboid formation, and then the metallic orbs were in 3 vertical square formations of 4 orbs each. So they like split into groups of 4, arranged in this like 3-pronged configuration, like a fucking... To me, that's like how birds fly.
Right.
How they migrate, creating the illusion of a cube shape at distance. All the orbs were white hot against the black cold ocean in the FLIR footage, or the forward-looking infrared. And each sphere created this like faint distortion of the atmosphere, both around itself and as like a heat shimmering
like when it's hot, you can see it like wavy type deal.
Because the forward-looking infrared is those videos that you see in black and white.
Yeah.
So the metallic orbs moved in this cube formation over the ocean for quite some time before they rapidly broke formation as pairs. And then the sensor platform lost track of most of the metallic orbs as they went up in altitude and accelerated in speed, but maintained observation on a pair of metallic orbs, continuing the original trajectory of the larger formation. So like half broke off, went up, half remained on.
So they went all like Blue Angels on their asses.
Yeah. And then these all have weird names. It's like CENTCOM and Indobacom, and I don't know what any of that means. No, so I'm not even going to fucking say it. There's another footage of a small, medium oval UAP that flies at a high speed and low to the surface. The footage begins as routine surveillance of a sensitive coastal facility, a military base, when the oval UAP rapidly comes into frame as it flies above this facility. The oval UAP then makes a rapid turn towards the ocean where it is tracked by the military base. I don't know why they're calling it the coastal facility.
The coastal facility.
So literally the military base.
So the base, got it.
And then the oval UAP is tracked flying low over the ocean, open ocean at high speed before the track is lost. There's another infrared footage of and imagery of a grouping of vessels engaged in, it says Syngent and Massent collection at night. Don't know what that means. In a specific area of the Pacific Ocean. In this footage, which was in close proximity to Navy vessels, a large equilateral triangle UFO suddenly appeared directly over the ship. Then 3 bright points are seen at each bottom corner of the UFO, which is observed to slowly rotate on its own axis. This rotation revealed a horizontal bar of sweeping lights. And then intelligence analysis associated with this event specifies that the equilateral triangle is a reproduction vehicle, or an RV, and concludes that the vessels must have been aware of the RV's frequent use of those coordinates due to foreign pre-positioning of advanced collection assets at the exact same time and place. So to me, this is what this means to me. A reproduction vehicle is like a UFO can break off into smaller ships.
Right.
So those corners are their own ship. And when they spotted this vessel that was tracking them, they started turning and they broke off, and then down comes that light bar and they go off on their own. Now, whether they go fucking invisible, I don't know. But that's what the reproduction vehicle to me means, is that like the ship is capable of reproducing itself.
Yeah.
And that's why they call it that.
And then, or I wonder if they're like Well, yeah, that. But the way that they said the foreign going to this place, we had been there. That's how it was able
to. This is in the Pacific Ocean.
So is there did they find a UFO under the water that they're trying to observe? So
I'll talk about that at the very end. I have no idea, but I do have my own theory on that. I will, spoiler alert, everyone is taking this meeting and they're like, there's aliens in the oceans, but they never actually came out right and said any of that.
Right.
All of the spottings have been in or around the ocean, but no one's like said like there's fucking ships down there.
There's ships down in the ocean.
Dove down into the water for sure. Have they come out of the water for sure? But also they're probably capable of doing that.
Yeah.
To get out of radar or to get out of being seen.
Yeah, or they could just go through a damn portal. We don't know what they're capable of.
We don't know what the fuck they're doing. So this reproduction vehicle, it hovers and slowly rotates continuously about 500 meters above the ocean, and then it just disappears.
Over a Navy ship.
Yeah, over the Navy ship.
I'm seeing like a Star Wars like ship coming down over a Navy ship, a naval ship.
Yeah, here's another one over a Navy ship. More infrared footage of an equilateral triangle UFO, approximately fighter jet size, that hovers less than 200 meters above a Navy vessel in the night at a location in the Pacific Ocean. Intelligence analysis associated with this event specifies that the equilateral triangle is an ARV or reproductive vehicle of unknown origin. The vessel gives no signs that it is aware of the reproductive vehicle maintaining altitude and bearing directly overhead. The two lights on the underside of it were visible, while a third was blocked from view in the video to a slightly like upward angle of like how they were recording. So they would assume, because all of those anytime that they've had a reporting like this, all three corners had the lights, but this one you can only see two. Okay, there's another footage of a large saucer-shaped UFO emerging from a really dense cloud formation. The saucer registered black against the white cold, which would be the atmosphere disturbance, which infrared, the IFRL, the front forward or whatever it's called. The saucer was between 200 and 400 meters in circumference. Huge, right?
Holy shit.
I don't know, because meters always trip me up. 30 feet
think
circumference.
Think about 200 meters was how far over that naval ship that last little one was.
Right, and that's how wide this
that's
one
how
is.
Big it was.
And displayed symmetrical concavities on the upper surface. The saucer shape emerged at a shallow angle, traveling upwards towards the outer atmosphere. After breaking above the cloud, the saucer suddenly reversed its direction, went down, partially back into the cloud cover, and then accelerated rapidly out of the frame and disappeared.
Is that the one that has been going viral right now, of the guy in the plane and he's like on the radio and he's like, I've got a fucking,
when it goes sideways,
yeah, like swinging
well, that
past
was like
him.
a disc,
I
right?
can't remember what that one looked
like,
but it did like the same
this is
thing.
Interesting. This last sentence says, this behavior was evasive in nature and implied that the saucer-shaped UAP had become aware that it was under observation by a space-based collection platform. So it was like, oh shit, it's probably cruising along, and they're like, oh fucking shit,
damn it, they caught us. We see it. Yeah.
So it might be that video.
So they went and they hid, and then they were like, fuck it, we got to get out of here.
Yeah. This one is a video, or there's another video of this boomerang UFO maneuvering at an uncertain altitude at a location off the eastern coast of the United States. It was tracked against the clouds by the sensor suite of the operating aircraft, and then the UFO rapidly decelerated to like a hovering position, like right in front of the fucking airplane or whatever they were in, fighter jet, followed by the sudden emission of a sphere of light from the two wings, which were coming out of the craft, because this is the boomerang one.
Right.
And it shot out the sphere of light and it began rotating, at which point the footage ended.
They just turned off their camera?
Yeah.
Let me tell you something, guys. If you happen to catch a boomerang UFO spinning out,
turn the fucking camera
leave
on.
the camera on.
Yeah, there's three more. So another one was footage of irregularly shaped UAP flying across the southern border of the United States. This appeared in the infrared, and it appeared to be modeled irregularly with hot, cold emissions and approximated a jellyfish or floating brain with hanging appendages in appearance. This UFO flew against the wind with no visible means of propulsion, maintained an unnatural rigidity in its movements and flight path, and maintained a comparatively low altitude to geographic features. In appearance and behavior, footage of this UAP violated the airspace of the southern border, and it resembled the same class of UAP that was observed near Department of Defense facilities in Iraq and Afghanistan. Never heard of that one. There exists at least one compilation video of this class of UAP, which was what happened in Iraq, in Afghanistan. And now it's happening here.
Oh, wow. Why do I feel like in my head I'm seeing like one of the see-through squids?
That's the big fin squid. I'm seeing it floating in space.
But then it's like at the same, how it's like it's riggedy. That means that it's like, we use that in football to talk about like when guys can change direction and like be twitchy and when they're running, which makes a really good wide receiver. So like, in my mind, what I'm seeing is that it can go against the wind without propulsion, and it can like it's like they look like they're glitching. That's exactly what it is. Like you want to see a player glitch.
Right.
That's the same exact thing.
Right. But it looks like jellyfish in the air.
Right, and it's glitching and it's going against, and it's got no means of propulsion. So did it just get evaporated? Like, you know what I mean? What is it called? When
evaporated.
Evaporated. You know how like sometimes fish and shit will go up in the clouds?
Like big ship is up there and it's like, come on, dude.
Get your fucking ass out. You're showing off and they're just running back.
Second to last one here. Another footage and radar data of a supersonic UFO of uncertain characteristics that conducted a head-on intercept of a United States naval fighter operating off the eastern seaboard. The UAP is observed emerging from a cloud bank at a high speed and approaching the USN aircraft head-on, rapidly, passing over the left side of the cockpit. That's the video.
That's the one.
Radar data from this approach tracks the UAP on its approach towards the craft, providing information on speed, heading, and evaluation. On, again, United States government networks, there is an OPIR imagery of a Tic Tac UFO transiting through an area of the Atlantic Ocean. The Tic Tac maneuvers at an altitude at or near local cloud cover, and correlated electromagnetic signatures were collected by some military group, a big long fucking abbreviation. In the available footage, the Tic Tac UAP transits rapidly through the field of regard as it transits the ocean. No observed reaction is seen to come from the vessel, but its proximity in time and space to the trajectory of this UFO suggests foreknowledge that this was an intelligence vehicle, like a military plane.
Yeah.
Fucking crazy.
Well, really quickly, because what you just said reminded me of this thought is, I was thinking about the other, maybe I was listening to a podcast and someone brought it up. I can't remember what it was, but what is going to be the next thing to DNA? Like what, what else? We had like we have geomapping, which allows us to see whose devices were in the area, but like, how reliable is that since you can leave devices behind?
Right.
So what is going to be the next update that is DNA that we can get from a scene just from someone simply touching another person or being near that other person? I think it was a podcast, but they were like, it's going to have to be energetic leftovers, like where whatever like your energy is.
Energetic DNA.
And they like capture it. And they're able to connect it to you.
Your aura.
And exactly. And what you just said was, its energetic magnetic field was able to be captured by, and DNA had been around in military long before. Mm-hmm. So that could be the next thing.
That's fucking crazy.
That's crazy.
I wanted to see my time, but I wasn't going to go through this. I will read these two examples of defense. But this thing that we're going to link here, this 12-page testimony, it has in here charts and it goes through each type and it tells you like their common behaviors, the common colors, signatures that they usually do if it's a Tic Tac versus an irregular, the speed that those sorts of UFOs travel. It's really interesting, but I'm not going to go through it all. I want to read these two last reports, and these are examples of defense reports on UFOs. So the first one is a close encounter by CVN flight deck personnel. While on active duty in the Pacific, flight deck personnel working night duty experienced a close encounter with a spherical UAP or of medium-large size. On duty, the flight deck crew observed a small orange-red sphere maneuvering at high altitude above the flight deck. Shortly after the first observation, the UFO rapidly descended from high altitude to a position directly above the flight deck, about 100 yards away. The UFO maintained altitude and matched the speed with the underway of the flight deck in the ocean for an uncertain period of time. Observing personnel reported altered perceptions of time during the close encounter. The UFO appeared to emit a soft orange-red light, which bizarrely did not illuminate the ocean or the flight deck of the vessel, despite the visual appearance of intense luminosity. The surface of the UFO was observed to be dynamic, roiling like the surface of the sun. The UFO took no reported actions during the encounter, only maintained a close proximity to to the vessel. After an uncertain period, the UFO suddenly shot into the air, disappearing at a point high above the vessel. Observing personnel felt as if they had snapped out of a trance and sense of profound unease. The incident report concludes with noting that the vessel had not responded in any way to what was perceived as a hostile interception by the UFO.
Whoa.
What the fuck?
Whoa. The fact that the light wasn't picked up, it's like the type of light that it's using can't even be registered within our atmosphere. Like it doesn't even reflect back off of anything.
Right. And the ocean reflects off everything.
Everything.
It's water.
Everything.
Yeah. Crazy.
That's crazy.
The last one is metallic orbs intercept an F-22 on air surveillance and control mission. While performing a routine airspace surveillance and control mission in the Eastern Air Defense Sector, an F-22 fighter observed multiple UAP contacts at mission altitude. Moving to intercept, the F-22 pilot noted multiple metallic orbs slightly smaller than a sedan, so car-sized orbs, hovering in place. Upon vectoring towards the UFO, a smaller formation of the metallic orbs accelerated at rapid speed towards the F-22, which was unable to establish radar locks on this presumed hostile UFO. The F-22 broke trajectory and attempted to evade, but was intercepted and boxed in by approximately 3 to 6 UFOs. One UFO maneuvered in proximity about less than 12 meters to the area directly starboard of the cockpit. 4 feet.
That is terrifying.
There, the UFO established a rigid spatial relationship with the F-22, maintaining its exact position and orientation parallel with the F-22's cockpit despite multiple evasive rolls and maneuvers. They're fucking spinning.
They're rolling.
And it's going with it. Surrounded by the hostile UFOs, the F-22 was forced out of the mission area under the escort of this UFO formation.
They escorted him out. What were y'all doing?
Where were you?
And did he even know what the fucking mission was? Because was that the mission the whole time?
It does give us the perimeter of this.
Okay, let's hear it.
This little section here. Or I'm sorry, no, this is a separate one. At a military airfield located on the eastern seaboard, ground personnel reported a lengthy low-altitude intrusion late at night by a small spherical UFO. The UFOs displayed visual signature management, appearing as a blurry sphere around which light was distorted or bent. This effect emanated outward from the central sphere, giving the appearance of a heat haze or misty volume of distorted light. Ground personnel reported eye strain, headaches, and feeling of unease or dread while observing this dark sphere. This is like dark, like
headaches,
eye
pain.
Weird. Because they're looking into what they're distorting light and they're calling it dark. So it's probably like the purest black color ever is what, but it bright, but black.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
And it's the same thing as that orange or where it's like the light doesn't even register. It's like so out of this world.
It was first observed slowly crossing the runway, moving in the direction of the sensitive area. Once across, it hovered above a grouping of ground equipment before floating further towards a building within this sensitive area. The UFO then floated the building before suddenly disappearing. Ground personnel were uncertain of the length of encounter, but estimated their observation lasted between 10 to 15 minutes.
Damn.
So this is their like signals intelligence section. It basically, to summarize it, it's telling us that foreign countries have the same observations that the United States do. And they communicate about it and everyone knows about it. So this isn't something that is prone to just the United States.
Okay.
And then this is their conclusion. The official disclosure of the existence, this is what they're fucking wanting, of non-human intelligence or NHIs in their presence on Earth is a pivotal moment in human history. The nature of this information is of such incomparable relevance to the public good that it demands to be shared. Some may object and say that disclosure at this time poses too many risks. To them, it must be said that we will never be able to predict how individuals, families, communities, and nations will react to revelations of such magnitude. Moving forward, we must guard against the lure of authoritarian solutions justified by expediency and appeals to national security. The good in humanity will always triumph through time, and it is in a moment of crisis that our capacities for achieving the extraordinary are discovered. Be not afraid. That's what the whistleblower had to fucking say.
I think AKA the people that are stuck in space, we need extraterrestrial help for them to be down. So we're like, just please, for the love of God, get it out there so they can help us and we can give them credit. Yeah. And no one's going to freak out when these people come, these astronauts come back and say, a bunch of aliens got on board and fixed our ship and we were able to come back home.
Yeah.
Because what?
Right?
What?
Why can't they say that? Why can't we let it happen?
Just
go
let it
happen.
Them. It doesn't.
Go get them.
It literally, no one's shook about this shit. Right. No one's like,
yeah.
We're like, we know.
Right.
We know. We believe in crazier shit, all right?
Literally. Okay, so I want to wrap this up with the testimony of Luis Elizondo, who again claims to be the former head of the Defense Department's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or the AATIP. So he works for the DoD, or worked for the DoD. He was head of this AATIP program, and he proposed in his testimony 3 actions to be taken. First, Congress and the president should create a single point of contact responsible for a whole of government approach to the UFO issue. Currently, the White House, CIA, NASA, the Pentagon, Department of Energy, and others play a role, but no one seems to be in charge, leading to unchecked power and corruption. And this is a quote too. I'm sorry, I should have said quote. Second, we need a national UAP strategy that will promote transparency and help restore the American public's trust at a time when the public's trust is at an all-time low. This strategy should include a whole of government approach, including the academic and scientific communities, the private sector, and our international partners and allies. Third, Congress should create a protected environment so whistleblowers, desperate to do the right thing, can come forward without fear. As it currently stands, these whistleblowers suffer because of stigma, a code of silence, and concerns about retaliation. These whistleblowers should be encouraged to come forward in ways that protect them against any forms of retaliation. Policies and procedures should ensure that protection. And for those who refuse to cooperate, it is up to the members of this committee and other lawmakers to wield their subpoena power against hostile witnesses and prevent additional government funding to those UFO efforts that remain hidden from congressional oversight. Basically, he's saying, don't fucking fund them if they're not going to tell you.
Exactly.
And Americans need to trust you, so start telling the truth.
Yeah.
I like that.
I like that man.
I think that man might be the whistleblower.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I think he might be.
He's like, and also, can we cut the whistleblower
at the end, you're adding it in. You're like, we need to give this guy protection. Seriously.
Yeah. So that's what happened last week. That's what's been happening for years, but it just all came out last week.
He's asking for a friend.
But I do want to talk because really quick, because nowhere everyone is like, there's aliens in the ocean. I mean, they didn't say there weren't, but they didn't say like there's alien communities in the ocean. So people are taking these small clips of them like saying
they down into the ocean. Yeah.
Yes, and blowing it up. So I kind of wanted to just, I don't know. I was interested in it. I hope everyone else was.
I'm very interested.
I mean, this is real time. This is what's happening
live
in
reporting.
Our government.
Live reporting.
And here I am giving it to you
right now. Damn.
So, anyway.
Welcome back to CAC News Network.
What's new Thursday?
What's new Thursday?
That's all I got.
Oh, damn, Morgan. That was crazy. Thank you for that.
And I'll give Tay the links. They'll both be up in the thingy.
And I'll take some, that document, and I'm going to put some on there for you guys to swipe through and see on the carousel.
Yes.
So that way.
Specifically, I recommend the charts.
Perfect. Screenshot it for me.
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Okay, my turn. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and apologize in advance to you for what I am about to do, because this case is really, really sad, and I need to give you a trigger warning for everything.
Well, I'm glad today we're putting everyone's life at risk with the United States government,
and then I'm putting their mental health.
We're going to wreck their mental health.
Yeah, definitely. We did not lay this one out right.
No, we didn't. Okay.
And I need to also let you know that it's going to be like kind of a little more triggering for you just because of the name.
Oh.
Yeah. And like the whole time I was reading it, feels more personal because of it. But I'll get to that here in a second. Main trigger warning for sexual assault, rape, child molestation, murder, toxic family trauma. I mean, a lot.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Here we go. So this is the case of the Rogers girls.
Oh, my heart.
I know. And by the way, I initially wrote these notes to be a mini, and they turned into a full case. So
same with me today.
Right. And so I know for our big money ballin' bitches, they're used to this style of reporting, but it's a little bit different than what I do on the podcast. I move a little bit faster, and I don't hover as much on like certain topics. So it's going to be a little different reporting. But we're going to go back to 1989 in the small Western Ohio town of Wilshire. Okay. And by small town, I mean like less than 600 residents at that time. This was a really close-knit town where everyone understood each other, as it was primarily made up of farmers, factory workers, school teachers, police officers, local shop owners and workers, homemakers, and all of their children. This was your typical middle-class American town. It was safe, everyone knew everyone, and they took care of each other. One of the families living there at the time were the Rogers. There was 36-year-olds Hal Hal and Joan, who went by Joe, as well as their 2 daughters, 17-year-old Michelle and 14-year-old Christe. Hal and Joe had met in high school. Both were born and raised in Wilshire and fell in love like the second they met each other. It wasn't until their senior year, when Joe became pregnant with their first daughter, Michelle, that the two got married, and they moved onto a dairy farm so they could start their lives together and take care of their growing family. Hal was described to be a very gentle, kind, but more so to himself type of reserved man, whereas Joe was this extremely popular social butterfly and loved a good yap session.
Yapper.
Together, while raising Michelle and Christe, Joe and Hal worked extremely hard on their dairy farm. But once both of the girls got a little bit older and into school, it was no longer keeping them comfortable with the income that it was providing. So to help make ends meet, in addition to her work on the farm, Joe took a night job at a local assembly line and like working a forklift. This allowed Hal to keep all of his focus and work on the farm since he was the head farmer. But he also did a great job at taking care of their daughters while Joe, his wife, was working. From all accounts, he was an incredibly involved and loving father and husband with his girls, whom he adored. In fact, he and Joe always made sure to have one solo night a week with each other. If that meant they had enough extra cash that they could get breakfast or dinner or go see a movie, they would. And if they didn't have the extra cash, they would go have a picnic in the park, go on a drive, or just take a stroll together through town. They were madly in love, and everyone in their lives knew it and like loved this about them, looked up to them for their relationship, which is probably why they built such a loving and happy home. Both Michelle and Christe loved living on their farm and loved the animals that they took care of there. They were extremely popular in school, well loved in school by their teachers, their peers, everyone within the community. So to make up for losing Joe as Hal's right-hand person on the farm full time, he asked his brother John to move in and help him in exchange for having like rent-free space on the dairy farm for his trailer, which John happily agreed to because he ain't got no expenses, you know. Right. When you live on a dairy farm, you got milk, you got eggs, you got everything that you need to survive. Jeez. And, you know, Hal's like, I'll provide it for you. You just work for me for free and you live here and eat for free. Mm-hmm. And John was like, sign me the fuck up. I would love to. John happily agreed to this and had been living there since, I believe, 1986, possibly 1985. And everything was going great. However, in 1989, all of that changed when police showed up at the Rogers dairy farm with a warrant for John, Hal's brother. John was arrested and charged with raping his ex-girlfriend at knife point, and investigators began raiding his trailer for evidence, during which they found something that would turn the Rogers' lives upside down. It was a stash of several photos, videos, and audio tape recordings of John sexually assaulting 2 different women. The first being his ex-girlfriend, and the second being his 17-year-old niece, Michelle.
Oh my God.
Investigators went to Hal and Joe and broke the news about what they had found, requesting to interview Michelle. Horrified, angry, and absolutely gutted, Hal and Joe called Michelle into the room. Michelle immediately broke down, sobbing like a weight had finally been lifted off of her shoulders as she let out the truth. Her Uncle John had been sexually assaulting her since the day he moved onto their property when she was just 14 years old.
Oh my God.
And threatened to kill her and everyone she loved if she ever spoke about their quote-unquote time together. Disgusting fuck of a human. Michelle was terrified for her life and only felt safe enough to tell the truth once he was behind bars. Hal and Joe were mortified, but specifically Hal. This was his brother, his own flesh and blood, doing this to his baby girl. He wanted to kill him, but he couldn't because clearly he's behind bars. And the news of this in this small little town spread like wildfire, but not all in the way that you would think it did, because of someone that will make you literally want to start a war. This town was split, half supporting Michelle and the other half supporting John. You heard that right. They were supporting a man that had videos, photos, and audio recordings of him raping and sexually assaulting
him. How?
Saying that he was innocent.
Oh my God.
And the leader...
What, that she was lying?
Yes. And that she planted it. The leader of this group was Hal's own fucking mother. Michelle's grandmother, John and Hal's mother.
Wow.
Oh my God. Not only that, She told everyone and anyone that would listen that she thinks Michelle worked with John's ex-girlfriend and planted all of this evidence that they filmed of each other, saying that it was one giant lie, which made absolutely no fucking sense. Like, the ex-girlfriend and Michelle had no connection to each other whatsoever, other than the fact they lived in the small town.
What a toxic mother and son relationship.
Exactly. Somehow, even though it made no fucking sense, people in this stupid little fucking town, sorry, but now everyone that believed in that's stupid. But
now everyone in that town
now everyone there is fucking stupid. But like, half this town was split in half because they believed this psychotic bitch of a mother that was John and Hal's, and they believed her and John over Michelle, police, and this ex-girlfriend. Actually, they believed it over hardcore fucking evidence. So, delusions.
Absolute delusion.
It felt like a never-ending nightmare. The Rogers family couldn't go into town, they didn't feel safe, and they felt like they couldn't trust anyone but each other. When Hal had an idea, he told Joe to take a certain amount of money, and it was like all of the money that they had saved up for that month. And he said, take this money, take the girls on a vacation, just get out of town for a week, let this cool down. You know, he's going to get the farm back in order. And
the town was probably also retaliating towards the dairy farm.
Exactly. He's like, let me get shit back in order. You guys just go get them out of here. They don't need to be a part of this anymore. Let the rumor mill go down, and, you know, just let the girls put their fucking hair down, feel like girls again. Just take a minute. They never had money like this. This was something that they had never done before. They had never left, neither of them, the parents and the children, had never left the state of Ohio. So this was a really big deal. But Joe didn't really want to leave her husband behind, except for the fact they just both knew that he had to work in order to recoup the funds that they were going to spend on this vacation. And also because, like you said, like, their business is being affected by what happened. So together, Hal and Joe told Michelle and Christe the plans, and the girls were so excited, and the parents allowed them to pick where they wanted to go, and the girls both agreed within seconds: Florida. We are going to Florida. Dun, dun. Exactly. So on May 26, 1989, Joe, Michelle, and Christe piled into their light blue Oldsmobile family car with luggage and car snacks packed up, and they hit the road. Together, the girls had planned every single second of this trip, from stops on the journey there and back. And that day, they got all the way down to Atlanta before stopping and getting a motel, as this was their halfway point. The next day, they did a bit of an early morning sightseeing before jumping right back on I-75 South, getting them to Jacksonville by the evening. The girls went to the beach, they went to the Jacksonville Zoo, then they got in the car and they went down to the Kennedy Space Center, and then they jumped in the car again, and they spent a full day at Walt Disney World, grabbing motels that they had handpicked out on the map, following their detailed itinerary that Michelle and Christe had agreed upon. Really just taking advantage of every single moment, because this was a blessing. This just didn't happen, you know, to be able to go on a trip like this. On May 29th, Joe sent Hal a postcard joking around saying, "The girls are dragging me all over this state. So much for relaxing." But letting him know that
I love that postcard. I wish it was still a thing.
I know.
I want to live
I wish I knew how to work the postal system to be able to send them on a postcard.
Like, you're sending your feelings, we're here.
That's so cute.
Because that's how you let them know. We're here.
We send you a postcard that we got here with love, and you sign your name and you send it to them. So they sent him this postcard, and they were just letting him know that they're having a really great time, but they missed him dearly and they wished that he was with them. On June 1st, Joe, Michelle, and Christe loaded back up into their car, and they hit the road again, this time extremely early, making their way down to Tampa to hit one more amusement park before making their way back home on June
Gardens, baby.
3rd. Exactly. So June 3rd is when they told Hal that they would either start their journey home or get home. So it was like, we're going to see how we're feeling. Such a girl's trip.
100%.
100% a girl's trip.
Us if we didn't have flights booked.
Exactly. So they tell him, all right, around June 3rd. And he said, great, I'll see you on the 5th, type deal. But it was weird that, the 4th and the 5th came, and he still hadn't heard from the girls since June 1st. Joan normally would call him and recap the day or tell him about their plans. This was weird and out of character, but Hal was just happy that they were having a great time. So he really didn't want to bother them until that low hum got louder and louder with worry about his girls. Something wasn't right. So on June 6th, Hal was tired of waiting. He needed action, and he went to the police station reporting his wife and their 2 daughters missing. Investigators took his report and slowly began to make a plan, though they really didn't want to spend too much time on it because everyone in the station knew about what was going on with Uncle John, and no one was blaming them if they wanted to extend their trip or just like be off grid for a minute. Like there was a lot of shit going on. And if they just wanted to be a little bit spontaneous, like do what you need to do to heal instead of returning to their room-filled town that was sad and bad memories for them. So that's what they were kind of thinking, like, let's not jump the gun and like do a whole search because they'll probably show up within the next 2 days. But they didn't. Just 2 days after Hal reported the girls missing, on the morning of June 8th, a maid at a motel that the Rogers girls had chose to stay at entered room 251. Now, we're going to go back in time for a second. Back on June 1st, when the Rogers girls checked into this Tampa Bay motel, their room wasn't ready yet, I believe. So they dropped off their luggage with the maid who was cleaning it and occupied themselves for a little while. This maid had cleaned the room, set it all up, brought all the girls' luggage inside before shutting and locking the door behind her, taking the keys back down to the front desk. Now, not long after she finished, the girls returned, got their keys from the desk, and headed up to their room to change because they were going somewhere shortly after. So fast forward to the morning of June 8th again. It had been a week since the Rogers girls had gotten their keys from this maid at the front desk after she had cleaned the room. And they had not requested a checkout date yet. But it was motel policy that after 7 days, a maid had to go in and just like pick up and make sure that everything was okay. And that is exactly what this maid was doing. So she goes to room 251 where the Rogers girls had rented and knocks on the door, calls out housekeeping, but there's no answer. She knocks again, calls out again, still no response. So she unlocks the door and cracks it open and calls out one more time, housekeeping. With no response, she enters. And the second she enters, she's immediately shocked because this room was in perfect condition, as in it was pretty much untouched from the way that she had left it 7 days before. The girls' luggage was still in the same exact position that she had placed it, like they had been opened, but they were still in the same places that she had put them. The beds were tightly made the exact way that she made the beds on June 1st, like no one had slept in these beds. And it looked like not a single towel or washcloth had been used at all. And being a woman, that did not set right with her. Right. Something's wrong. She immediately left the room, went straight back down to the front office where she told the motel manager everything that I just told you. And he was so disturbed that he decided to call police. The Tampa police responded relatively quickly and got the name that the room was registered to, Joan or Joe Rogers. And they quickly linked this name to the missing persons report for Joan and her daughters that Hal had filed just 2 days earlier to this room 257. 251, 257?
251, I thought.
One of the two, my dyslexic ass, who knows? And immediately after making this connection, an investigation began with police interviewing the motel staff and searching through the Rogers room. From the account of the motel staff, Joe, Michelle, and Christe were seen at approximately 7:30 p.m. leaving the hotel's restaurant and running up to their room to change quickly before leaving in their car and not returning. In room 251, they located a Polaroid camera and the photos that the women had taken over the course of their trip. The women's purses were all missing, along with their car and their car keys. Investigators began sifting through the photos that they have found and located 2 pictures that had been taken in that specific hotel room. One of Michelle bending down, like kind of sifting through her bag, looking as if she was in the middle of changing. And the second one was of the beach from their balcony, like of the sunset. And this was obviously good for proving that the motel's timeline that they presented to investigators was correct with that sunset. And it seemed like the girls had never returned after leaving their room on June 1st, just like the motel staff said. But it still didn't tell them anything about where the girls could potentially be. So they began searching the surrounding area for their light blue Oldsmobile car that Hal had reported missing along with the girls. And it did not take too long for them to locate it, about a mile away, parked at a boat ramp. Unfortunately, there was no sign of the girls, but they did find a lead. While going through the women's car, they found 2 brochures lying in the floorboard that had some writing on them. One, which was confirmed to have been the writing of Joe, had directions to the exact boat ramp that their car was parked at from their motel. The other, which was not written by Joe or her daughters, said Courtney Campbell Causeway, Route 60, Days Inn. So just directions to the motel, where the girls were staying. And this handwriting was for the most part in capital letters, which was more common for men at this point in time. Like it's a man's handwriting, especially a man in the 80s handwriting. However, this wasn't going to help them get any closer to the Rogers girls at this point. So they decided to focus on that first note that was written by Jo, specifically one part of it, where she wrote, quote unquote, blue with white. And this was at the very end of the directions that she had written out that would get her from her motel to the boat ramp. So what was she directed to look for that was blue with white once she got to this ramp? Either someone's boat or someone's car, but most likely it's going to be a boat. So that's what investigators used to move forward.
A blue or white boat.
Yeah, blue or white boat. However, not long after beginning to ask questions around the boat ramp, investigators were put in contact with the Coast Guard. Because just 4 days earlier on June 4th, they had got a radio call from a sailboat captain with several people on board just under the Sunshine Skyway. As they were coasting by, one of the people on board spotted something floating in the Tampa Bay. It was a lifeless human body floating in the water. And it was a horrific sight. The Coast Guard responded, and as they were coming in, they located a second body floating just 2 miles north of the first, just off the St. Petersburg Pier. And as they were recovering the second body, they got a call about a third body that was spotted floating just 200 yards east of the second body. It was 3 females floating face down, all naked from the waist down, and all bound with rope around their necks.
Oh my God.
The Coast Guard had sent the 3 women's bodies to the medical examiner's office for an autopsy and to be identified. Though they knew how these women died, they had no idea who they were until the Tampa police connected the missing Rogers girls to the boat ramp. The investigators immediately called Hal Rogers and requested dental records for both of his daughters and his wife, which he promptly sent them. Because of the women's lifeless bodies being so badly decomposed due to the hot water, they could not make a photo ID. And unfortunately, upon comparing dental records, they were able to identify the 3 victims as being 36-year-old Jo, 17-year-old Michelle, and 14-year-old Christe Rogers. This was Hal's worst nightmare. He sent his wife and his daughters out of state to escape the harsh reality that they were forced into at home for the very first time so that they could be free.
By their own grandmother.
Only for them to be brutally murdered when they were there. Because this was absolutely no accident, what happened to the Rogers girls. No, this was a meticulous, a brutal, and a torturous murder. The autopsy showed that all 3 victims had water in their lungs, proving that they had been thrown into the water alive. All 3 of them were bound, sexually assaulted, and tied to concrete blocks around their necks before being thrown into the water one at a time, meaning they were alive and forced to watch as one at a time they were thrown in.
Oh my God.
The second body, which was identified as Michelle, had freed one of her hands likely before being thrown in the water and had attempted to free herself or fight off her attacker but was unsuccessful, which hurts even more so knowing that she was fighting because like she had been fighting her Uncle John since she was 14. Like it's just really upsetting to me. And hearing the story behind how this mother and her 2 teenage daughters ended up in Florida in Tampa in the first part as being this like dream getaway really touched the investigators. They refused to let these women's attackers or attacker just walk free. They refused to let this case go cold or for them to be forgotten. The investigators fought not only for them, but for Hal, a man who had just lost everything. His loyal wife that was the love of his life, his 2 daughters, which he fiercely protected, loved, and fought for, his brother who betrayed him and his family, his mother who turned her back on him in the worst way, and half of his community that was filled with people he had known since birth. Investigators felt his rage and they were going to get his girls justice. They had 2 main pieces of evidence that they were working with though. The first one being the man's handwriting on the brochure that was given to the women for directions to their motel. And the second one, the note on the second brochure where Jo wrote that she needed to look out for a blue and white boat. But other than that, all they knew was that this was a brutal murder by a psychopathic killer who had likely killed before and would 100% kill again. And they even brought in a profiler that determined that the girl's killer or killers was more than likely, aka positively 100%, following along with all media coverage on this case, in addition to the fact that the suspect or suspects are more than likely closely following the case in order to learn what they did wrong and perfect their tactics based on what police say. As in, they were probably shocked that the bodies floated up as fast as they did, and we're going to learn from what police say on how to not let this happen again in the future.
What the fuck?
Knowing that this person is watching was very intimidating because it meant that investigators had to be very methodical about everything that they said publicly. However, they still needed the media to help reach out to the public, to give tips and leads, and to keep this story in the forefront of everyone's mind. So they did what they had to do. They used the media, and they got hundreds of tips within hours of the first few releases going out. Investigators theorized that the women likely got lost and stopped and asked for directions from someone that looked like a local or was a local to their motel. And whoever this person was that helped them then probably invited them on a sunset boat ride on this person's boat, which is why they had the directions written out with the, look out for me and the blue and white boat, which was the suspect luring them into this seemingly innocent trap. One of the tips that had come in was from another guest that was staying at the same Days Inn that the girls were in Tampa. This witness reported seeing an unidentified man who looked to be well-groomed loading a cooler onto his white boat with blue stripes that was being towed by a dark-colored either Chevy Blazer or Ford Bronco. Investigators were unable to get really anything else from this lead, but it was a good starting place. Another thing that they were struggling with was the potential of this being two men, because it seemed hard to believe that one singular man could overpower, bind, assault, and kill all three women alone, throwing them into the water while they're still alive, alone. In fact, they used this theory as the basis of their investigation initially for the first 3 years, even taking this theory on a 1991 Unsolved Mysteries episode that aired covering the Rogers girls case, which garnered several more tips and leads for investigators. However, the case continually seemed to be slipping back to cold. Investigators refused to lose hope though, and thank God they didn't, because in February of 1992, they got a tip from Madeira Beach Police Bulletin, which is just east of St. Petersburg, that would blow this case wide open. The tip described a similar attack and rape of a 24-year-old Canadian tourist that took place just 2 weeks before the Rogers girls were murdered on June 1st. And the details of this case were spot on in comparison. The 24-year-old Canadian woman was invited on a sunset cruise by a man that she met at a local Tampa convenience store that happened to own a blue and white boat. She accepted the offer because the man was very kind and did not seem to be threatening at all. And at first, the boat ride was great. They chatted for a little bit. They got to know each other. The man told the woman that he owned an aluminum business and lived just 2 hours away from Madeira Beach by boat. But then, just as the sun started slipping below the horizon, the tone of this man changed, and he asked the woman to have sex with him. She refused, at which point he became violent. He threatened to tape her mouth shut and throw her into the water if she refused to cooperate with him, and out of fear for her life, the woman did not fight him as he raped her. She said she acted like she liked it to save her life. They returned to the boat dock where she was left, dropped off by the man, and she went back to her hotel room where her friend was, and together they went to police and reported her attack. They had put out a composite sketch of the man, but got no tips or leads, and the case quickly went cold, with investigators theorizing that her attacker likely was a tourist himself, not a resident of the area. But this connection of the women's cases was exactly what the investigators on the Rogers girls case needed. They pushed out this composite sketch from the attack that happened 2 weeks prior, and then took a leap of faith by releasing the brochure with the man's handwriting on it for the first time, saying, if you find the person who wrote this handwriting, you will find the killer. And who put this out was the soon-to-be retired Sergeant Glenn Moore of the St. Petersburg Police Department as his final attempt, his Hail Mary, literally his Hail Mary at solving this case before he retired and stepped down from his service. And it fucking worked. On July 30th, 1992, after being released to like the newspapers and local media, the handwriting sample was released on several local Tampa billboards, along with photos of the Rogers girls. The very next day after the billboards went up, so a few weeks, 6 weeks, I think. Yeah, 6 weeks after the police put out the first release with the handwriting in the newspaper, police received a call from a local woman who said that she had contacted the police when they first did the release in the media about this handwriting because she had a contract that had the same handwriting on it from a man. So she's like, I'm going to fax this over to you, but I think this is your guy that I have on here. And so what she faxed over was a copy of a contract from a man that she had hired to install aluminum enclosures on her property. And it was a perfect match, according to a handwriting expert.
Wow. If someone posted handwriting, I wouldn't know what yours looks like. I would maybe be able to pick up
pick out my handwriting. I think you could.
No. I feel like penmanship nowadays is a lot more similar to everyone else's penmanship versus back then.
I could pick out Logan's in a heartbeat. I could pick out yours in a heartbeat. I could pick out my mom's, my dad's.
So yeah, I couldn't pick out my mom's. I couldn't pick out my sister's.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
I know. I don't know Lola or Phoebe's handwriting, but I know. Because I don't think they literally were writing when I lived with them.
We just don't handwrite like we used to.
Yeah, we really don't.
You know what I mean?
I mean, I'd be handwriting a fucking lot, but
you know what I mean? Back then, you would get letters from people. Everything was handwritten. Now everything is just not.
And also, my handwriting changes every single time I write. There's not a single time that it looks the exact same.
Same.
At all, period. So they had this handwriting expert compare this contract that this woman faxed in to the brochure handwriting sample, and it was the same person. The handwriting belonged to a man named Oba Chandler Jr. With a quick search, detectives learned that he owned a blue and white boat that he had suddenly sold just out of nowhere, just days after the Rogers girls' murders. And Mr. Chandler had a long criminal history spanning from 18 juvenile arrests as well as felony arrest as an adult for rape, kidnapping, and robbery. But when they saw his photo, it only more so confirmed that this was their guy because he was an exact match to that composite sketch from the Canadian woman's attack. In July of 1992, Oba Chandler Jr. was a 45-year-old man. He was born on October 11th, 1946, as the fourth of 5 children belonging to his parents, Oba Chandler Sr. and Margaret Johnson, in Cincinnati, Ohio, where he was raised. Trigger warning, I cannot believe I forgot this one in the intro before we got into it, but trigger warning for suicide. When Chandler Jr. was just 10 years old, his father hung himself in the basement of the family's apartment and was discovered by his family. At the funeral, it was reported that 10-year-old Chandler Jr. jumped into his father's open grave as the grave diggers were filling it back up with dirt and tried to hang on to his father's casket to not be forced out as they were pulling him out. This entire experience, according to everyone that knew 10-year-old Oba Chandler Jr. at this point in his life, was like the thing that changed everything about him. He went from being this like really kind, normal little boy to a straight up criminal. At just 14 years old, he began stealing cars and was arrested at least 20 times. As an adult, he had various felony and regular charges ranging from masturbation while peeping through a woman's fucking window, loitering, burglary, kidnapping, armed robbery, and possession of counterfeit money, along with several other things. In the armed robbery case, though, he and an accomplice had broken into a Florida couple's home and held them at gunpoint. Chandler Jr. then, I'm going to just go back to referring to him as Chandler. I was only saying Jr. back then. I don't want to say his full name because I fucking hate this guy, so he's going to go by his last name, Chandler. Chandler then had his accomplice tie up the husband with speaker wires as he took the man's wife into a side bedroom where he forced the woman to strip down to her underwear. He tied her up and then he continuously rubbed the barrel of his revolver across the woman's stomach.
The fuck is wrong?
And then he robbed them and left them tied up in their home alive. He had served time and been released on good behavior for literally every single one of these incidents. And investigators learned that from May this is fucking crazy. So not only is he being released after all these incidents.
Arrested, released. Good behavior, but
he had to have been arrested over 20 times just as a juvenile. Like, that's insane. This is insane. Even more insane if we could get there, but here we go. So investigators learned that not only he had been released on good behavior, but he was really well liked, because from May to September of 1991, so 2 years after the murders, while they were investigating the Rogers case actively, Oba Chandler Jr. was working as an informant for the U.S. Customs Bureau Tampa office.
What?
Yeah. At which time he was living with his wife, Deborah, and their young daughter. I believe her name is Whitney, and I'm going to get to that here in a little bit, in a home off Dalton Avenue in Tampa. However, it seems as if they just abruptly jumped up, sold their house, and got the fuck out of town, moving to Port Orange, which is near Daytona Beach, just days after the billboards of the Rogers women was put up in February of 1992. And from the investigators' surveillance on his new home, they knew that he had skipped town. But on September 24th, 1992, as he was making his way back to Florida to go be with his family, he was spotted at a gas station where he was arrested. Then investigators executed a warrant for his phone records and his house, which placed him on the water in Tampa Bay the night of the murders from at least 1 to 4 a.m., calling from like coast. He would call to coast and then call out from coast to his home, and told his wife, like, oh, I'm having some boat trouble. I'm going to be home. Don't worry, though.
Oh, my God.
So he like literally placed himself right there.
Yeah,
Dumbass.
if you were watching the news to know what you did wrong,
that's what you did wrong, stupid. But I'm glad you were stupid, you fuckhead. Anyways, during the trial, Chandler admitted to being there, but claimed to be fishing alone, and added that he had returned home very late because his engine wouldn't start, which he discovered was from a gas line leak, noting that he called both the Coast Guard and the Florida Marine Patrol, and even flagged down a patrol boat, which he claimed were all too busy to help him. Therefore, he was forced to repair the line temporarily with duct tape that allowed him to return safely to shore. That wouldn't have... Ask Bucky, that ain't working.
Yeah, no,
that ain't fucking working. Yet there were 0 records of distress calls from Chandler to either of those agencies, and there were absolutely no patrol boats in that area the night and at the time frame that he claimed to be there, and stopped one, and they were too busy to help him. But what really put the nail in his coffin were the witnesses that testified against him during the trial. The first person being Judy Blair, the Canadian woman that he had attacked just 2 weeks before murdering the Rogers girls. Judy testified that the day before her attack on May 14th, 1989, she and her friend that she was on vacation with named Barbara were at a convenience store in Tampa. They got to chatting with this man that they met there, and he invited them on a sunset cruise for the following night, telling them that his name was Dave P. Either Posno or Posner. It doesn't matter. It was Oba Chandler Jr. Barbara declined the offer, but Judy loved going out on the water and willingly accepted. When she returned back to the hotel where Barbara was waiting for her after getting off the boat after being attacked by Oba Chandler Jr., Judy broke down and told her best friend Barbara what had happened, and they went to the hospital and called police. Both Barbara and Judy testified that Oba Chandler Jr. was the man that they met as Dave in the Tampa convenience store, and the man that Judy was attacked by on his white and blue boat. Next, the prosecution called forward a former employee of Chandler's at his aluminum company that testified that he continuously bragged about, this is a quote, his date with 3 women on the bay starting the morning of June 2nd, the morning after the murders. And lastly, taking the stand was his own daughter, Crystal May Sue, who testified against her father, detailing how she had overheard her father talking about murdering 3 women as the reason as to why he and his family could not return to Tampa. On November 4th, 1994, Oba Chandler was found guilty of the murders of Joe, Michelle, and Christe Rogers, and was sentenced to death.
By firing squad, and they let Hall do it?
Literally. And just after he was sent to the Union Correctional Institution...
Tie a fucking cinder block to his feet, throw him in the ocean?
Yeah. Just after he was sentenced and sent to the Union Correctional Institution, his wife, Deborah, filed for an emergency divorce, and a protection block, I guess, was put against him where he was not allowed to have any photos or contact at all, any information about any of his daughters with Deborah. Now, I believe he had 2 older daughters named Crystal and Suzette, because there are reports from them like giving quotes, giving statements about their dad. And I believe that these were from either 2 different women or just like one earlier woman that he was married to or dating. dated. And then he had his youngest daughter, Whitney, that belonged to him, and Deborah, his wife at the time. And then I know he had a son named Jeff from a previous relationship as well, and he was way older. Side note, I do need to say that the entire time he was in prison, not one person came to visit him. Good. Amen.
Call it solitary confinement. If
exactly. I mean, clearly no one fucking liked you.
Right.
So, however, investigators were not done with Chandler. Profiling experts were sure that this was not his first kill, or else he would not have been bold enough to, or confident enough to abduct, assault, and kill 3 women all at once. This case was an escalation from a previous killing they felt. You know, why he didn't kill Judy, we will never know, but they were sure that Judy was not his first attack, which is the Canadian woman. Mm-hmm. So they always kept him on their mind for unsolved cases that were around the areas that he had lived in his lifetime. And on October 10th, 2011, Governor Rick Scott signed Chandler's death warrant and set his death date for November 15th. On that day, November 15th at 4:08 p.m., Chandler was executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison in Rayford, and he declined to make any statements before his execution, but he did leave a written statement with prison officials that read, "You're killing an innocent man today." Oh, I literally LOL'd. Like, when I read that for the first time.
Your last thing that you want
is a lie.
Is a lie.
Is a lie.
Have fun in hell.
Fucking have fun. All right. Watching front row as Chandler took his last breath was Hal Rogers. He had finally gotten the justice for his girls that they deserved. But this was not the end of the case, because just as the profiling experts had believed, on February 25th, 2014, DNA connected Oba Chandler Jr. to an unsolved murder from November 27th of 1990. So a year after. 1989 was when the Rogers girls were murdered. So on November 24th of 1990 in Coral Springs, Florida, I really apologize if I say this name incorrectly, but it's Ivelisse Biros. She was 20 years old, and that day she was last seen leaving her job at a sporting goods store at Sawgrass Mills Mall. When she did not return home to her new husband, they had literally just gotten married. He went to the mall looking for her, worrying that her car had broken down, where he found her car and all 4 tires were slashed. Her husband immediately reported her missing, and within 3 hours of filing this report, her body was found by 2 men that were returning home from a fishing trip, lying underneath residential mailboxes in a neighborhood. She was naked with ligature marks on her wrists and ankles, brown tape stuck in her hair that looked as if it had been used to cover her mouth. She had been sexually assaulted, which was where they got the DNA sample from that connected her case to Chandler. And it is theorized that Chandler had watched her for 2 days to get used to her schedule before her shift ended. After dark, Chandler would then go slash her tires. Once she came out and discovered her slashed tires, Chandler pulled up acting as if he was this like helpful stranger good citizen guy, which he was good at charming people and making people think that he was, and was just there to help. So she likely got into the car with him to, you know, take her home or whatever it may have been, but instead he drove her to a remote location where he attacked, raped, and killed her. And he is actually still a suspect in several cases today, but these are the only cases that are confirmed to be linked to him. And that is the case of the Rogers girls.
Horrible human being.
Scum of the fucking earth.
Uncle too.
I mean,
grandma too.
I need to make a little quick comment. I know that our cameras are literally about to die, but let me say this. So once John was arrested, there was a few days before they came to them about what they had found of Michelle's stuff in there, and John claimed that he was like completely innocent. The family had not seen like any of the footage or anything that they had recovered from his trailer, and before they knew that there was like real hardcore evidence. Obviously, when your brother's like, I'm literally completely innocent, like you're their only lifeline, you know, and that's your brother. So John's and Hal's mother asked Hal to bail him out. So Hal had taken $7,000 out of the bank, posted his bail literally hours before the police came to them and said, "Oh my God, we found this stuff of Michelle.
Can I get my money back?"
That just shows you the fucking chokehold that this mother had on both of her sons.
Yeah, that makes me ill.
And apparently there was like, he could have like rescinded the bail or something. I don't know what the fuck it was, but he didn't. And they asked him like why, and Hal was like, because I'm so conflicted right now. Like I literally had
what is
my
going on?
whole life just imploded in front of me. Why are you asking me these questions right now? $7,000, my fucking ass. My daughter, what are we talking about? $7,000. Don't worry about that. That's a fuck ton of money.
A lot of money then.
That's a fuck ton of money. But like he couldn't even think about that.
Yeah.
At that moment.
That's so fucking sad.
So I wonder if they did get it back and that was the money that the girls used for their trip.
Thinking.
But I don't know. I just read one article that detailed that, and it really upsetting. Oh, another thing. And remember how it was like one of the witnesses was another motel guest. So that witness saw Oba Chandler Jr. at the motel. He like came and was like, you girls can just follow me. I was passing by and I thought, let me just went up to their room.
What?
And
did she testify?
Yes. And the maid testified that, like the maid that was all involved in this, right? She testified that when she was taking, she had taken something up to the girls' room just after they went in there. Like maybe they forgot their to-go boxes in the hotel restaurant. So she took them up to them. And as she was leaving from dropping off the boxes of the food, she passes by Oba Chandler Jr. And she was like, I didn't even register that until I saw his picture after his arrest. I saw him. That's a man. I walked past that day and I thought, oh, I didn't see him check in. I wonder if that's Joe's husband.
Damn.
Yeah. And she was like, I completely forgot about that until the motel guest recalled it too.
Good for the Tampa police for getting that shit down pat.
Well, you know that those good old boys talking to a good old farmer boy, Hal, and Hal sitting there being like, my fucking brother. I mean, and they're probably like, we will literally burn this fucking town down.
We'll find town.
Yeah, like, you know, that had to be like a collection of girl dads that just like really. I mean, it fucked me. I mean, I haven't gotten choked up in a long time on the podcast, and I read that 372,000 times to try and not be choked up over it. But you can't. You really can't.
It's a fucking terrible case.
Yeah, terrible fucking case.
Terrible human being.
Fucking case. Terrible fucking case. Like the worst. But I don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah.
I told you were going to ask me if I was a fucking case. Yeah. I told Morgan today, I said, when you're driving home after we record today, you're going to think back and say, is Taylar okay? That was crazy.
That was crazy.
Just wait till you hear the many. Okay.
All right, guys.
Love you guys. Talk to you on Tuesday for TBB.
Love you. Bye.
I love you. Bye.